morning. Welcome to Introduction to Algebra. Today we're going to talk about Roman numerals. But before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about where they came from. Let's talk about the Roman Empire. And I know this is not history class. You're fine. All right. Some interesting facts about the Roman Empire. Number one, the city of Rome is believed to have been started by two brothers. And there's lots of stories that go around how that happened. And I'm sure Brother Mosley has shared those with you. But it is believed that the city itself was started by two brothers. In ancient Rome, they worshipped a lot of false gods and goddesses. Pretty much if they didn't have a logical explanation for it, it was a god. They had the god of this and the god of that. And a lot of times when we talk about Greek mythology, there is a such thing as called Roman mythology, and a lot of them line up. For example, Zeus is the Greek god. That is the superior of all gods in Greek mythology. Well, in Roman mythology, that's Jupiter. Okay, so you have a lot of similarities in them. I'm not saying that their gods all have the same characteristics, but there were a lot of similarities in there. Of course, the Colosseum is one of the most famous places in Rome. The Colosseum was where they would crucify, they would kill Christians, martyrs. They would take Christians there, and they would, if they wouldn't deny their faith, they would feed them to lions. They would chain them or give them only a small stick to defend themselves against bears. It was a horrible thing. They called it that activity. They called it the circus, and it was till death. So unfortunately, thousands of Christians died there. But you know, every time God allowed the persecution of the Christians, His word and His gospel would spread. Another thing that is interesting about the Colosseum is sometimes they would block it off into the arena floor, and they would fill it with water, they would flood it, and then they'd have what they called boat wars. And they literally would put boats in there with different teams on it, and they would have a war. You never wanted to be chosen for a game in Rome. It's not like in the youth center where, you know, Brother Ricky, pick me. I want to get hot chips, or I want to get a candy bar, because it's lots of fun. In Rome, if you were in there, you fought to the death. Gladiators were slaves that were forced to fight. And if they didn't fight, or they didn't fight well, they would get killed and they would die. And of course, if they won, they would make lots of money for their owners. And so their owners would do things that are oftentimes horrible as far as immorality and things like that for them. But they were treated a little better, but they were still a slave. Okay? Next, who was famous from Rome? Well, Julius Caesar and Nero are two of the men in history. Of course, the Roman Empire was in power when Christ was on earth. And they spoke the language of Latin. Today, Latin is a dead language. There's no culture that uses Latin as their spoken language. It is a dead language. We do use it. We use it in science and in medicines and things like that. But we don't use it in everyday conversation. Now, one of the things that the Romans gave us was the calendar. Okay? Another thing that they gave us was a counting system. Now, it's a little more complicated than, you know, what we would say, because we're used to our base, what we call base 10 numbers. These are the Roman numbers, okay? These are the ones that you actually have to memorize to know, to solve all the other things. I'm going to teach you these Roman numerals. Then you have a couple of rules, and you can write any number. It's not complicated. I means 1. You probably already know that just from doing a number of outlines for me. V means 5, okay? X is very common as 10. These three are very common to us. We use them all the time for things. We use them for copyright dates. We use them in our books. We use them for outlines. We use them for different things, okay? L is going to be for 50. C is 100. D is 500. And M is 1,000. Now, how do you write a number in Roman numerals? Well, in Roman numerals, if you want to write a number, you can just you add the Roman numerals together, as long as there's 3 or less. Now, I cannot put 3 V's together because there's a symbol for 10, okay? So if I wanted to say 15, I would not say VVV. No, because there's an X. I have to use the larger number if I can. Okay, so I would say XV for 15. X meaning 10 and V meaning 15. you write the larger number first. You add smaller numbers, okay? In other words, if x is larger than v, okay? So x is worth 10 and v comes after it, I add it. If a small number comes before a larger number, for example, if I put a I, which means 1, in front of a v, so the small number comes first, it means to subtract. It means 1 less than 5 is 4. Sorry about that. Okay? So, if I have x, x, I. The i's are worth less than the 10, so I'm adding this. I'm going to say 10, 20, 21, 22. If the numbers come after, if the smaller numbers come after, you add. If the smaller numbers come before the larger number, you subtract. Okay? I can have no more than 3 of any number, or of any letter together, and I cannot do that if there's a larger number for it. So, if I wanted to write the number 3, I can do that. I can write I. There we go. That's the number 3. But to write 4, I have to say 1 less than 5 is 4. Let's go over here. All right, we just did this one, 4. We have to say 1 less than 5 is 4. What about 9? What are we going to say? We're going to say 1 less than 10. Okay, so I, x. 1 less than 10. Now, for 34, I'm going to have to break this apart. For 30, I'm going to use what? 3 x's. X, x, x. That's 30. Now, how do I write 4? 1 less than 5. Okay? What about 39? Think about that for a second. Okay, for 30, you're going to write x, x, x. And for 9, you're going to write I, x, because 1 less than 10 is 9. What about 40? Look at all of your symbols. You're going to say what? The easiest way to do that would be to say 10 less than 50. So x, L, is going to be 40. Okay? I want you to look at letter F on your practice set on page 302 in today's lesson 108. The number is 49. Write that on your piece of paper. How would you write 49 in Roman?